everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer, forger, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Monday edition of my bi-weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only live stream, Crafting the Deep, in which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Call from the Deep. If you're playing characters Gottwald, Max Savra, or Twirl, this stream is not meant for you and will be full of spoilers. But for the rest of you, of course, always welcome. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday, except for this Friday. You can join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. For our campaign, we use Roll20. For streaming, I use OBS Studios. Reminder, vacation starts Thursday for moi, so no crafting stream on Thursday and no D&D session on Friday, but that means we get an extra crafting stream to talk about our next session, which is probably good because we are starting a whole new quest arc. So coming off of chapter 2 from Neverwinter, the players were given 3 major quest arcs to tackle, I guess one of which actually leads to the main quest, now that I think about it, which is the one they just did. So they just completed one of them. So essentially I'm taking chapter 3, Scouring the Seas, which is the big, whatever that chapter is in like Storm King's Thunder, where like things open up and you can just kind of do whatever you want. And this chapter is literally both humongous and also the smallest, if that makes sense, because there's all these different locations that are listed in chapter 3. Like everything around, basically everything you see here, everything the light touches is included as anywhere from like a single encounter to just sort of a paragraph of information to actually a full-blown kind of miniature dungeon crawl, is all these different adventuring sites, which is cool, but there's not a lot of like story or rhyme or reason or anything to doing that, other than it's just like, hey, have them go around and do stuff, and then eventually one of these quests should lead to Tentric. So I do think that's a criticism of the campaign book. It's a little too open for open sake without having some kind of through plot thread. So what I'm doing is trying to organize things a little bit better. Plus, I don't think, you know, I have my complaints about open world system in D&D, and I know my players do. We all kind of as a group collectively prefer having a tighter story, a tighter narrative focus, knowing what we've done and what's coming next, with obviously having choices to make along the way. But in terms of like, okay, now you can go do whatever you want and go to all these different adventure sites, that's not really how we do things here. So to that end, again, I created these 3 different quest arcs based on the different forces that attacked the city of Neverwinter. So we've got the Sahuagin, we've got the undead pirates, and then basically I've teased the Kraken Society as well as the Mind Flayers doing all of their, you know, creepy mutation stuff. So they'll be able to follow up with the Mind Flayer thing with getting another Mind Flayer general at Orlumbor, which I'm going to run the Styes, which is from Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and probably the single coolest module from that entire anthology book. Looking forward to doing that with only just replacing probably the, I think it's actually an Aboleth who's the villain who's like trying to raise a Kraken. Obviously, I'm using Aboleth in a very different way, so I'm going to replace that Aboleth with a Mind Flayer. So we'll have to change things around a little bit, but I think that will go over pretty well. And I just kind of decided to put that down here in Orlumbor. And then they already did the Pirate Skyhold one, which did give them the location of Sea King Tentrix, by the way, and I'll add a little exclamation point to the map down here. But as you note, it's all the way down to the south. So in terms of like, oh man, which quest arcs are they going to do next? Well, I've kind of already created that system because of the proximity to their location, which just they'll start north and basically just make their way south along the coast. I realized the only problematic thing that I wrote myself into is they can actually just like go along the coast for a good chunk of time and not actually do open waters. And we're going to run into that problem with this session, because we're going to talk about if we want to do any encounters between Neverwinter and the Mare of Dead Men, which is where I plan on putting the Sahuagin Stronghold, versus having them actually go out to sea and having proper, like, you know, actual sea-based encounters versus just going up and down the friggin' Sword Coast again. Although, to be fair, I guess it's been a while since we've done actual Sword Coast stuff, probably since Storm King's Thunder, and even then, in Storm King's Thunder, we ended up going inland quite a bit, so. But with this quest line, I believe the next thing we're going to do, and the next quest arc I'm going to talk about, is the Final Enemy, which is a module from Ghosts of Saltmarsh. It is technically the 3rd and final story in the Ghosts of Saltmarsh trilogy, which concludes the one that starts off where you think the lizard folk are the bad guys, but it turns out the lizard folk are actually gearing up for war with the Sahuagin, who took over their home and you're supposed to just go and kind of do a reconnaissance mission on their big fortress they took over from the lizard folk, and it's a giant multi-level dungeon that's like partially underwater. Just a really cool mega dungeon for Sahuagin. Now, I have a problem. I don't want to call it the final enemy because that would be a bit of a misnomer. Doesn't really make any sense. It's not the end of my quest chain. It's just one of the many things, and it's really kind of a almost one big side quest for the players because they've already got their main quest information, and it doesn't really technically advance the main story. But the Sahuagin are a main threat. They've been one of the main enemy forces throughout this campaign, and obviously defeating their main base on the Sword Coast would be a huge blow to their efforts, as well as gives them the chance to rescue a lot of people. I think I mentioned to Mac, for example, that one of his NPCs that he cares about is somebody we can rescue, and so that'll give him some motivation. So that'll be the plan for running the final enemy, and at this point I'm probably just gonna call it Sahuagin Stronghold because that's what the location is. It's not the best name for, I guess, the quest arc, but it works. And I wish, like, algorithmically I could say, go call from the deep : the final enemy, because people are like, oh, this is another one where he's doing the Ghost of Saltmarsh module, which I am, but story wise, unfortunately I don't think it makes sense to actually call it the final enemy. So that's why I'm calling it the Sahuagin Stronghold. But at least in parentheses on this screen I can put, or on this cover screen I can put the final enemy in parentheses. So to get there, we can talk about if we want to do any encounters. My idea was to put the Sahuagin Stronghold off the coast of the Mare of Dead Men, which is a giant swamp. An enemy. Thank you, James. By the way, hello, Nate, Demnix, Lumpy. Good to see the regulars, the usual suspects. It's basically the halfway point between Neverwinter and Waterdeep, and I don't know, it just kind of makes sense where I try to think about where a lizard folk lair would be that would be on the coast. And gosh, the big infamous swamplands where like ancient black dragon twins dwell and things seems like the perfect location. So that's, I think we're going to be on there. I don't know how many encounters or things I really need to soften up the players, because the final enemy, the Sahuagin Stronghold, is kind of humongous. And while it says it's designed for 7th level, which is actually perfect for us because the players will be level 7, I don't know if it's designed for them to actually break down the door and battle room to room, because it's hilariously gigantic. It's actually very old school, like hallway graph battle maps, very top down, which is fine. I'm thinking maybe we actually want to run this almost like a heist mission, rather than just a formal dungeon crawl, because it is just, it's a main enemy base. So maybe if there's some clever way we can use of like, not quite like the UNT layer from Tomb, because that was a little more social involved, although maybe the players will surprise me. Maybe they'll have some kind of plan I haven't foreseen. And you know what? One of the best dungeons we've ever run, in my opinion, was Sunblight, because one of my players decided to run it like a big social experiment, which actually worked absolutely brilliantly. So I should not underestimate their ability to do that. But I do want to try to convey that those kind of outside the box thinking, some kind of stealth, heist, social thing, sneaking, like all that should be on the table versus just trying to assault this thing head on, because it would be bad news. The best way to do that would be to get them into contact with the lizard folk who lost the stronghold. So being able to chat with them and then get information from them would probably be ideal. And though we just dealt with lizard folk weirdly in the pirate skyhold, but we can have different tribes of lizard folk, I think. What does it talk about? Give me the history of it. The Sahuagin Stronghold, it talks about the inhabitants, the rulers, illumination and doors, all that's good stuff. Not a typical Sahuagin settlement, which makes sense because it was actually a lizard folk settlement. Has been submerged 80 feet in the water. So I think it's something like level 3 is like completely underwater. Level 2, I can't remember if that's underwater or partially underwater. And then I think level 1 is not underwater. So they'll have to deal with some more. So it's interesting. It's like half the dungeon's above and half is below, which I like. But I think the original story has the party not even necessarily going in. Okay, once the adventure provides plenty of chances for stealthy infiltration. That's good. And fights break out. Does it actually tell us about the story? And it just jumps right into the dungeon. Okay. Maybe it's under Council of War then. I do have the book in front of me, but I figure it's easier to use Roll20. Saltmarsh Town Council calls a meeting with the adventurers who have been approached to undertake the next mission. We've got 2 lizard folk. Set up a camp outside Saltmarsh that doesn't worry as a quarter. Possible more to come. A merfolk salvager named Erin represents her colony in the meeting. And a Lokatha. Those are like just different kind of fish people, I think. Yep. Not Kuatos. Combined force from the allied species is being assembled to strike the Sahuagin fortress. Before this attack can be correctly planned and executed, a small group is needed to make a preliminary excursion into the fortress. The information gained by this reconnaissance team will allow the allies to plan a proper attack. The full assault will be launched 14 days after the reconnaissance team returns, assuming the mission succeeds at least in part. So what's interesting is the original adventure is not meant to be a traditional dungeon crawl. It's a reconnaissance mission for a giant war party to actually attack this base. The party is not expected to battle their way through this dungeon, nor is it even advised, it sounds like, given the sheer number of creatures they would have to deal with. I do like the idea of putting the players in a military base that's, it's very James Bond-esque. There's just dudes everywhere, and you kind of have to sneak around and do everything. But there's also a team here that's very strong, so that kind of rubs up against the idea of the party being able to handle all these situations. They produce a crude map that identifies the location of the Sahuagin stronghold. Am I given this map? Because that would be amazing for heist purposes. Wonder if I can find a map online that would do that. That's something I love from Keys from the Golden Vault, is they gave me proper heist maps. I'm flipping through the pages and not seeing anything like that. Boy, this is a 50, 60 room dungeon. That's humongoid. And the other reason I might be not looking for a whole lot of encounters to soften the party up, right? Because usually I'm looking for random encounters as part of the adventuring day budget to soften the party up before they make it to some dungeon crawl. But in this case, this is a massive dungeon with a ton of things in it. And you can give them different, even quests and stuff in the middle of the dungeon. And I don't know if I just need to throw much at them before they actually get in here. Unfortunately, I don't think I have that handout. That would be a great thing to produce. Location of the stronghold. I guess it's just the location of the stronghold, so it's not the actual base itself. It occupies an island, which we'll have to redo that. This is their former lair, and consists of a series of natural passages and caves, honeycombing the interior of the island. Give players information about the former lizard folk lair and the surrounding area. Okay, so this is why it feels like kind of a heist, because they do get some information and a specific mission. I definitely want to change it where it's no longer just a reconnaissance, though. They either, A, have to take out the Sahuagin leadership, or B, rescue people, and probably both of those things in order to consider this a success. Or maybe, I don't know, they're given some kind of bomb they can detonate and plant. I don't know if I can give them some extra thing. There's got to be some kind of main leader they can just take out. Like, hey, go in there and take out the boss, and then try to get the hell out of there, because there's just going to be too many for you to fight. But maybe if they take out the boss, that will disrupt their leadership enough, and the lizard folk will be able to take the base back. Or maybe they've also got one of those things that the other Sahuagin had, which was that Shield of Farsight, where the Mind Flayer, can talk out of them and basically help command them. So if they destroy that MacGuffin item, then also the Sahuagin kind of fall apart in terms of their renewed tactics and leadership. For the algorithm, thank you, Eric. So the lair is a 3-level cave system inside a rocky island. I think I can use one of these little islands right here called in the Red Rocks. That'd be kind of neat. There's little islands right there, so kind of south of Thornhold. In fact, is that given a location here in Scouring the Seas? Red Rocks. It is. Going off on a tangent, off the coastline is a collection of tiny islets known collectively as Red Rocks. Most of these landforms are sea stacks covered by waves of the Sea of Swords. Wrecks on countless ships over the centuries. Frequent these waters, go sail through the rocks, require more than 2 crew members run the risk of scuppering their ship. Okay. Well, that could be a encounter. That actually could be an interesting encounter. Just have to make it through these rocks and kind of help control their ship or take damage. Characters navigating through the Red Rocks encounter a group of merfolk who live in sea caves beneath the rocky sea stacks. Merfolk are more aggressive in their communities that are kind and collect tolls from ships that pass by. Well, if I want to replace that with maybe Sahuagin are just taken over. Local merfolk were corrupted by the evil influence of the Leviathans or forced to serve as guards and caretakers for the newly born Krakens. Although no eggs have been left here for centuries, the merfolk still pledge allegiance to the Krakens, specifically to Slarkorthel. Vessels that travel through Red Rocks are spied upon by the merfolk. Characters of the past of 12, notice them. This character ship is attacked by a giant shark dominated by Tempest, a warlock of the Great Old One wielding a +2 rod of the Pact Keeper. God, Toro would love to get his hands on that shit. Honestly, all the characters, I think he's gotten the most fancy stuff, though. That's pretty powerful. On Initiative 10, the following round, Tempest and 5 merfolk tribal warriors join combat. I already attacked them with a giant shark, though, right? Same reason why I'm replacing the Aboleth with a Mind Flayer. Like, I don't want to reuse things I've used. Although, I reused Lizard Folk just now, and now I'm going to use them again. But in this case, the Lizard Folk are going to be purely, which I guess I already use them as a social encounter also, is going to be the social encounter. I figure you can meet with the Lizard Folk, and then they'll tell you, hey, yeah, this is... which, by the way, they'll get this location from, I think, is Harley Finn, Rochelle named the character, that they found the Triton from the Sea Ghost when they first took over the ship. That was the captive. I replaced the... whatever the original one was, Oceanus, the sea elf or something with that character. And her whole backstory was she was sent by Gillian to check out, to follow the Sahuagin, see what's up with them. And she learned about the Sahuagin taking over this lair and kicking out the lizard folk. And that was something she was going to follow up on before she got captured. So she'll be able to tell the players about, hey, I actually do know where they're layered at. It's somewhere off the coast, and we need to meet with the lizard folk down there. So probably any encounter they would have on the way to the lair would just be a Sahuagin encounter, and we can talk about what kind of a ship the Sahuagin would use, if any, or if they would just attack straight up by climbing the sides of the ship and attacking them on the ship. But that would certainly be the most thematic encounter and the one that makes the most sense for the players to run into as just a preliminary Sahuagin battle. So the Gargantuan octopus I used is from More NPCs 3, which was a very nice product on the Roll20 marketplace. That I'm trying to look up the name of the... God damn it, I'm so bad about this. I don't think it's Falcon Forge Fantasy, I believe is what it is. I found it. Falcon Forge Fantasy. It's an add-on on Roll20 called just More NPCs 3, and it's got several different creatures on there, and one of them was a colossal octopus, and this is the one where I used the stat block to mimic its attacks from the mutant whale, which worked out pretty well. It's a CR17 though, so obviously it's not designed to actually battle for anybody, but high level characters, but definitely has some cool, interesting, more aquatic themed stat blocks in there we could play with. We fought a lot of a Sahuagin before, but again, they're about to fight a lot more, and there's actually a lot of cool Sahuagin stat blocks to use between Ghost of Saltmarsh and the Monster Manual, and probably different versions of Monster Manual expanded. I think we can use all of those. Main entrance is now a large cave that faces the sea coast. Lizard folk made a few changes to the place, only adding stairs to connect the levels. Sahuagin have made drastic changes to their former layer beyond submerging the two lower levels beneath the water. So levels 2 and 3 are both below water, whereas only level 1 is above water. Mission goals. Determine the strength of the Sahuagin force. How many warriors, lieutenants, and other battle-ready troops are present. Locate important areas within the fortress where the warriors' barracks, the officers' quarter, and the leaders housed. Discover any significant defensive measures. Discover how advanced the Sahuagin preparations are and when they might mount their first attack. Combat not required. Characters are considered an elite team that can bring back the information. They're likely need to fight some of the Sahuagin, but must remain quiet as often as possible to avoid becoming overwhelmed. Which is interesting for a dungeon, for a giant mega dungeon. You're basically going into a main layer of an entire faction, and it's designed to be overwhelming odds, so you're kind of a pinpoint strike team. Get the players to think tactically and avoid unnecessary fights against a superior foe. Yeah, good luck telling 5th edition players to avoid unnecessary fights against a superior foe. Man. Reward the character's efforts to move past areas filled with Sahuagin undetected. Do not hesitate to have the Sahuagin react if the characters behave carelessly. Yeah. So, I want to keep the concept of this dungeon not being a traditional kick down the doors and fight your way room to room. I want to keep that concept for sure. It's probably not going to be just a reconnaissance mission, because I like the idea of also the lizard folk being displaced from their dungeon, and maybe they're thinking, can lizard folk breathe underwater? I actually don't remember that. Maybe they're thinking they just don't have a good way of taking it back with all the Sahuagin there, with it being like sunken in the water. Let me look that up real quick, because I bet I've got at least a couple lizard folk in here. Lizard folk. 15 minutes, that's right. Okay. So obviously they would be at a huge disadvantage trying to fight their way back into their lair, which means they wouldn't really even be able to use their lair unless they had some magic to bring it back up, right? Because it's sunken like 2/3 into the water. So maybe this is less about liberating it for the lizard folk. Maybe they're thinking, well, we're just screwed because they not only did they take over our base, but they lowered it into the water. So if we want to actually help the lizard folk take the base back, there would have to be some kind of weird magic involved that would reverse that. But maybe you could do that. Maybe you could put in the room, in the boss room, there's some kind of device that's actually keeping the whole place anchored down somehow. That's a lot of magic to move it down there. Does it just says, I don't know if I haven't reread the whole thing. I can't remember if there's something that actually does that, or if they just kind of hand wave the way and say, yeah, they did this magically. So that could be the goal, is like, hey, figure out how they did that, and obviously go try to take out their leadership while you're at it. And it'll be really interesting on how much information I give them via like the lizard folk being able to do their own stealth and reconnaissance missions. How much do they know, and can they know all the leadership and that you need to take out and all this kind of thing. I don't know how much to give them, but I like the idea of giving them basically saying, okay, here's the location and here's what we want you to do. And they may even be able to say, here's the general layout, but it did say like alterations were made. So I don't know if I want to give them like, how much do you want to give them of the actual maps, for example? You could almost give them like this map without the numbers. I think that's too much information though. It didn't say what alterations were made. I think it just says you have to like skim through it and see. And the other thing we have to look at is, do we want any encounters along the way? Because this does take some travel, and it would make sense they would have some encounters just based on travel rules. But the players are 7th level now, which we're getting a little bit almost out of the range of having to fuck around with random encounters just for the sake of random encounters. I like encounters when they help budget the adventuring day. And I like it when they help sell whatever the area is thematically, and you reflect like whatever enemies in the area or events that have happened or something as encounters. I don't necessarily like just straight up random encounters while we're high enough level where it almost doesn't seem to matter too much. That being said, we are, and the other thing I was going to say is we're also right on the Sword Coast. We're not like going out into the middle of the ocean and then having to deal with some real like who knows what's out there kind of a thing. Instead, we're just literally, for the purposes of especially this one, and really again when we go to the styes too, I kind of wrote myself into a corner just going along the coast. We're just going along the coast, so you are just, you're probably seeing land. It's probably a highly trafficked area. I can't really do a whole lot of like exotic, crazy open sea stuff with this particular path. It's also 1, 2, 3, 4 hexes away, which I think is worth 4 encounters if we decide that each hex is about a day's worth. It's 60 miles, which I think they can do in a ship in about a day. So if we wanted to look at random encounters, we could, and certainly Call from the Deep has plenty of them. I believe I roll a D100. Let's see. Characters are traveling, roll a D20 twice per day of game time, each morning and night. An encounter occurs on a roll of 14 or higher. Roll percentile dice and check the random encounters table for the terrain appropriate to where the characters are. So, what I say? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we would roll a D20 8 times, and every time they get a 14 or higher, they would get an encounter. So I'm not gonna commit to this, but just for funsy, right here on the stream, we're gonna go ahead and do some of those D20 rolls just to see what I end up getting. So we're gonna do 8 of them. So number 1 is a 3, so no encounter there. 2 is 11, no encounter. 3 is a 12, no encounter. 4 is a 9, no encounter. 5 is a 5, no encounter. 6 is an 8. Gee buzz. I would be like throwing these dice away if I was trying to do anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only have 2 left. 7 is an 8. Okay. The very last one, the 8th roll, was a 14 or higher. It was a 17. So I don't know what the odds are statistically of what a 14 or higher would get me. That sounds like a 30% encounter rate. So getting 1 out of 8 is a little low, but honestly, that's probably about close to what I was planning on doing. So we rolled 1 encounter. Now for funsies, we're going to roll a D100 and then consult this table that Call from the Deep has, which is by region, biome, I guess, like forest, grassland, hills, mountains, and sea. So we'll only be looking at the sea table because we are going to be on... I guess there's always a chance, weirdly, they could go on foot, but it doesn't really make any sense. They've got a ship, and they go way faster on ship going down the Sword Coast. So I don't see there any reason to go on foot into the swamps. And and Harley will be able to say the fact that, like, yeah, there's this... they're in the island there, and I guess the only tricky thing would be I'd want to point them to the lizard folk first. Maybe she'll mention the fact that I believe they've been displaced and they're somewhere in the mare near Thornhold, because I think we can use Thornhold. We'll look at that in a second, but let's do this D100. All right, so just to see what oh, that's hilarious. I rolled a 17 again. Is floating debris. That sounds like the least exciting thing I could have rolled. Floating debris. Characters notice something floating 100 feet away. A successful perception check reveals the nature of the debris. Roll a d6. Barrels and crates, shattered wooden planks, or a chest. So you can either get crates and barrels filled with goods, which is just whatever. Alcohol, rations, ropes, nothing that really matters. Planks of shattered wood. Definitely doesn't matter, although apparently there's a 50% chance a pirate ship is nearby. Or chests. These have been chests from their vessel. The chests are locked and keyless and require a successful DC 14 Dex check or a successful Strength check to open. Inside are some valuables. What a weird random thing to get. Well, let's just for funsies, let's roll that D6. Rolled a 3. You found barrels and crates of goods. That's fairly boring for the 1 encounter. And on this day, you see a bunch of floating crates and barrels as if a ship was struck. Which, maybe the Sahuagin were able to sink a ship or something. So, but you know what? I wasn't really planning on doing a rough and tumble encounter. The one exception being, it does make sense to hit them with Sahuagin. Now I realize that, well, Eric, they're about to go into a dungeon with nothing but Sahuagin in it. Are you sure you want to use this for your encounter? But it makes sense if they took over a layer that obviously they would be patrolling the layer, right? You don't just hole up in your base if you're on a whole entire faction and just, wait till somebody knocks on the door. No, you've got all these like vanguard forces
patrolling around so they don't get anywhere near your base, or at least you get proper warning that people are coming. So I think you could just have the Sahuagin attack the players, and maybe B, have the players see like Sahuagin scouts that are chasing over, and maybe they have to like chase them to avoid, a warning system or something. Yeah, not the best encounter system. Is there a Sahuagin one I could like borrow here? There sure is. 74 to 83. Salty Sea Dogs as an encounter. Only the saltiest. Party encounter a game, which by the way, has no level range for these encounters as far as I know. I have no clue. I don't think it mentions anything about level, so. Oh, it even says random encounters aren't tailored to a character of a particular level. If characters encounter hostile creatures beyond their ability to defeat, give them opportunities to run, hide, negotiate, otherwise avoid certain deaths. So just designed to be all over the place, which is interesting. So 2d4 plus 2 Sahuagin accompanied by 1d4 plus 2 Hunter Sharks. There's a 20% chance the hunting party is led by a priestess or raider. Which at this point, the basic Sahuagin stat block are pretty easy for the party to take down. Even the raider's not much better. So I'm going to attempt to throw characters into the water where the sharks viciously maul them. So I'm going to have a hatred for elves and always attack elven characters first if possible. Mind Flayer technology made in their heads or distributed throughout their tribes by the influence of the Ill brain. The Sea Devils may carry with them spears made of strange metal, foreign tablets with Qualish inscriptions, or weapons created by the Illithid for them. That'd be a cool idea. I don't know how best to reflect that. Spears made of strange, other than giving them like stronger weapons, I guess. Maybe some kind of like psychic things that bump. I mean, the one thing that they get is that Farsight shield that can stun people. They wouldn't never be able to mass produce that necessarily. So I'm going to take over the world if they could just stun people at whim. So I'd probably have to scale up the Sahuagin to make it a little bit more interesting, or just let the players like absolutely steamroll them. Could also be interesting if they go this far. Maybe well, no, because the Sahuagin would know about these characters at this point. Now they wouldn't know they're coming. But they would definitely, obviously, a lot of survivors of the Sahuagin were still able to capture people successfully through Neverwinter and bring them all the way down to their base. And then the party went and did a whole other mission. So it's been, enough time for the Sahuagin to make it back. Probably not a whole lot of time, though. It's by the time we make it down there, they've only been there for maybe a day or two ahead of them. But they would have a bit of a reputation amongst the Sahuagin, which could be interesting. So, yeah, I'm not sold on any particular encounters because I think coming down here... Let's see, what does Stronghold say? What I'm picturing is we get down there, we talk to the lizard folk who are now just set up somewhere in the swamp, and they can give the sad story about... Well, I really won't have them be sad sacks. They'll probably be a proud tribe. I need to talk to Heather and see if she wants to be from this tribe or cares or anything, because it's weird using all these different lizard folk people and it hasn't come up yet. Although I like that Chris is like the one Minotaur skeleton I threw. He's like, "Are we related?" Like it's weirdly racist. You're the one doing it. That you think the first Minotaur person you meet is somebody you're related to. But I think they're gonna meet with the lizard folk. And then the lizard folk can tell them all the important information here, which was in the Council of War section about the Sahuagin taking over. And instead of a reconnaissance thing, basically say you need to be able to destroy. We saw they have they were able to lower it into the ocean, and then that's prevented us from being able to launch a counterattack. And also, are they maybe they got their asses kicked by the Sahuagin? So just somehow restoring the home and defeating the Sahuagin leadership, and also destroying the Sahuagin's connection to the Mind Flayers. Because I don't think I'm going to put a Mind Flayer here, because I don't want a Mind Flayer to be the boss of every big thing. And I do want a Mind Flayer to be the boss of the sty. So I think I'm going to use whatever the boss of the Sahuagin is, which I don't know what stat block that is off the top of my head. It's stronger than a Baron. Flipping to the book now. Sahuagins. Barracks, guard post. Sahuagin Wave Shaper might be up there. Nope, there's a couple of those. Sahuagin Champions. I don't know what the single boss is supposed to be, if there is one. There's a sea lion in here at some point. I think there's also a talking lobster, which hard to say if that'll go over well or not. Yeah, a baron on the throne and then a high priestess with a bunch of Sahuagin and shell shark Sahuagin champions. We can probably play around with different stat blocks and do some different things. It says it's designed for 7th level though. The Maw of Sekala. Is that supposed to be a unique shark? Sounds like it. It's actually easier for me to... Well, maybe I can find it on here quicker. Creatures. Maw of Sekala. Is that going to be under named NPCs, perhaps? Oh, you know what? It's going to be in the final enemy. I need to scroll down to that one. I forgot that's actually separate. Sea eel, as opposed to land eels? Maw of Sekala is not in here. No. It must be just a form of giant shark or something. Where are you? It sounded cool. Maw of Sekala. Summoned from the shadowy depths of the ocean through which one entitled magic, the Maw of Sekala appears in the final image as the avatar of the hungry Sahuagin god, a huge two-headed shark. Fed a steady diet of sentient creatures captured by the Sahuagin and offered up as tribute. It's a CR7. Well, that's cool. It's got legendary actions. Where the hell is that in the stat block? Am I missing that? Final enemy. It's not shell shark. I don't know. Huh. It's just called Maw of Sekala, but it's not in here. It's weird. When do they talk about it? In one of the levels, maybe we can find a link to it. Hatchling, priestess, hatchling. It was on the throne room. Or no, it wasn't. It was earlier than that. And I'm just looking at all the fun monsters to get thrown. There it is. Okay, it does link to it. Where the hell is this in the journal? Oh, it's under named creatures. Shit, I didn't see that it's own named creature section. My bad. There it is. Weird ass two-headed shark, which actually is very dynamically, aerodynamically bad. I think sharks have been unchanged for many, many, many years. Cool though. I like the fact that I get a CR7 shark boss with legendary actions. That's nice. But maybe there's something in the throne room then. That's level 37. There's a ritual, and then there's a throne room in number 60, I believe, which is in level 3. But you could put some kind of final MacGuffin. Nope, was wrong. Arena, treasure chamber, armory. Where was the throne room? It was on level 2? I was way off. Baron's living quarters. Sleeping quarters of the Baroness. Okay, maybe it's the Baroness. She's got her own stat block. Baroness Seklas. CR5? Yeah, okay. Or is it just a Sahuagin? It's just a Sahuagin Baron. But there's multiple Sahuagin Barons in here, stat block wise. Okay, there's the throne room. 42. High Priestess, which is CR5. Okay. She's got a whole bunch of spells. So that would be like the final boss room, which is actually not even level 3. It's a level 2. Room 42. I'm gonna have to go back and peer over this entire dungeon before we run this thing. Because it is a big one. Throne room's up there. Stairs are down here. I guess you could just keep going down those same stairs to get to the third level. What do you go on these side ones? What a giant freaking room. Or a giant dungeon. So I think just treating it like a heist. Or not a heist. I keep saying heist, but you're not stealing anything. An assassination mission, infiltration kind of, but instead of doing reconnaissance, you actually are trying to go in and kick ass a little bit, but you're trying to kick ass like quietly, you know. You're the Navy fucking SEALs. You're trying to get in here and get your job done without fighting off the entire country of Sahuagin, which I think is a cool thing to get to the to try to have the players do if they can manage to do it. But it means, I think, just using probably a Sahuagin encounter. I originally thought that maybe we could use, maybe they have to gain the trust of the lizard folk in order to get the proper information, but I don't know how well that would go over because the players are just showing up. These guys are already in trouble, and the players are like, yeah, we just need some information because we want to go take out the Sahuagin. Like, why would the lizard folk be like, oh, well, we don't know if we trust you. We need you to do this other quest for us before we give you information. The person will be like, well, what the fuck? We're just offered to help you. And like, all right, screw you guys. We'll just go help. We'll just go do it. So, because I thought, well, maybe this would be an opportunity to use the that special quest from Danger at Dunwater, which is not a mission I plan on using from Ghost of Saltmarsh. It is the second one between Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh and Final Enemy. I really didn't like it, though. It's where they go to the lizard folk and they realize the lizard folk are not the bad guys. So it's a big dungeon, but it's not even a dungeon crawl. It's a very oddly set up adventure. And there's one quest where you can go on that's like an optional quest where you hunt this giant crocodile who has legendary actions. And it's like a CR6. It's a pretty big monster. Even though Danger at Dunwater, the adventure is designed for 3rd level, which I was like, oh, that's going to be, you know, too low of a level for my 7th level party, but a legendary crocodile boss fight CR6 would not be too far off for a fun encounter. So if I don't know, you have to do something contrived, which would be like you show up and the lizard folk are going to give you the information, but then like, oh, but the tribe chief's like son has been taken by you know, this crocodile out on a hunting mission, and can you please go save them first? Which a lot of this would work out really well if I can get Savra to have a connection with the tribe. I think that would help add some nice, meaningful context here. So I'll see what I can do there, and maybe she's even got like, you know, maybe her mom's a tribal leader or brother or something cool. Like, I don't know what we can work out. And, you know, make this lizard folk tribe maybe fairly sophisticated, because this whole layer was like this nice big, you know, thing with all these, you know, laboratories, and like maybe, you know, I don't want to go with the stereotypical like, oh, the tribal people had like nothing, but just like, no, these were maybe more advanced lizard folk because of this cool base they had and the leaders they had, but now they've been supplanted and taken over only because the Sahuagin were in cahoots with the Mind Flayer, with the Mind Flayers and Zelix 4 and all that power, and that's why they've been so strong. So by severing that connection, which the players should already know, okay, there's literally a device that we can destroy that acts as the conduit for the Mind Flayer influence and control remotely, so we can destroy that for sure. We should go ahead and destroy their leadership, at least their like leader that they have, so that way the Sahuagin will kind of fall apart without a proper leader and do a lot of infighting, and that will thin their numbers. So I can basically add all these as like, you know, quest tips. And then of course their goal is going to be to rescue the captives, because I believe, I don't know what level it's on, but I believe as written there are captives, in fact that might be a level 3 thing, that the players can rescue, which is a great reason why maybe they have to go to the 3rd level. Yeah, torture chamber and dungeon. There's cells in here. And I think they're forcing people to fight in an arena, which would be a fantastic thing to do. Maybe Max sees his Master Sliver, you know, forced to fight people. I guess they're given like certain I don't know, one of those magic items that can let you breathe underwater or something. Otherwise, we'd be kind of screwed because this whole thing is underwater. But really give them this gigantic mega dungeon, but with like multiple quests and goals to do. And then maybe even while they're here, there's, you know, plenty of opportunities for other characters to talk to and meet up that are also prisoners. Or like I said, there's literally like a sentient lobster running around for whatever the fucking reason that can help the players out. Like, there's got a lot of fun things going on in here that I need to read through and refamiliarize myself with, and also make sure I've got the right maps for it, because clearly these, you know, maps from Ghosts of Saltmarsh are not going to work. But I think out of all the ones from, well, I mean, I'm basically picking the three best that I thought would work well with my campaign, but I also probably would consider them the best overall, which is Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh, the Styes, and the Final Enemy. I thought Temerot's Fate was interesting, and at one point I was kind of on the fence about whether or not I wanted to include that one. But at this point, it's kind of too much to do it as like an encounter, and I don't know. I don't think I need to add anything else to my, you know, major quest arc system I've got, because once they do this Final Enemy, which, you know, should take a couple, even though I plan on actually getting them relatively quickly, like we don't have many encounters, you know, playing on the way there, meeting with lizard folk and then doing the whole mission, but that dungeon is gigantic. And then it's the Styes, and then we can just go to Sea King Tentrix, but we'll have some like blockers and things in the way. That'll be a big area, and then it's the finale from there. So I'm thinking, I don't know if I want to meet, probably on the way down, we'll tease the fact that there's been some destroyed ships, and then we'll might have the, in fact, maybe I can even have some, not chests, but almost like a bait system where like there is some loot like floating in the water, and maybe it looks like a ship has been capsized and whatever, and the players go and slow down and maybe think to check it out, and that's when like the Sahuagins attack and they like climb aboard the ship, and maybe I can have players rolling, you know, perception checks or checking passive perception and just throw down with a battle on their own ship, which should be tricky for, because the one thing that's been a thorn in my side so far has been Twirl's Hunger of Hadar spell. Ever since he got that, has been fairly brutal. He can't move it around in its concentration, but it's a big zone, and it just turns on this massive like blind, void, you know, all these AoE effects. It's been very effective for a lot of low-level guys. But if I literally climb aboard and attack their ship, that makes it pretty hard for him to throw down that effect, I think. We can play around with what kind of Sahuagin stat blocks we want to use. And that's easy because then I don't have to create another map for that, because I already have their basic ass encounter map with their ship, right? That we used way back when they were going from Neverwinter to Gunbarg, and I guess back and forth. But we can just use that one like standard encounter map of their ship and just have Sahuagin appear on there. So that's another good piece of advice I have when doing encounters. If you want to spice it up, just take 2 encounters and run them together. I've done that a lot just to make a regular encounter that much more interesting. So if you've got like, and especially it works well if you've got an environmental encounter and a combat encounter, you can combine those together to make it a little bit more memorable. So in this case, I think combining the floating debris encounter with a Sahuagin attack, because again, it makes sense. Sahuagin will be in this area. That means they've gotten close, and they can fight those off, and then that will be pretty near where they'll be able to hopefully just come ashore, talk to the lizard folk who are maybe on this peninsula. Oh yeah, we're gonna look at Thornhold real quick to see. I think I've got that tab open. I do have that tab open there. So Thornhold, and the nice thing about Call from the Deep is they do like have information for all of these different sites. This is all in this chapter 3 section. So if you just wanted to get more context from these locations, my goodness, does it absolutely deliver in that case. Thornhold is a coastal fortress on the southern tip of the Mare of Dead Men. Castle's without adornment. Thornhold's been owned by Magisters of Waterdeep, Knights of Semilar, and the Zentarum, currently occupied by shield dwarves of the Stoneshaft clan. They refer to it as Castle Stoneshaft. Or sorry, Stoneshaft Hold. Travelers are free to visit Thornhold up to a point. The dwarves allow caravans to make camps on their walls, but forbid access to the keep and extensive caves below.
Rumored to continue past the Underdark. A claim the dwarves neither confirm nor deny. The city is ruled by Lord Clanmaster Dwarric Stoneshaft. That is a fucking dwarf-ass dwarf name right there. The city is protected by an elite armed guard called the Stone Wardens. And then there's the encounter is them being attacked by... or no, it's not. This is a different one. I didn't read this one, did I? Following morning, upset Lord Clanmaster with his characters. He asked why they... that's right. I read the one on Leylon. Leylon was a Zentarum outpost, which were being attacked by like Knights of Samlar or something. It's a whole crime scene. Oh, interesting. I'm going to have to read about this one. Okay, this might actually be interesting. That's been a night. The rooms were broken in by two angry Stillwater carrying the characters in prison, and the characters imprisoned them in the jail beneath the city. Yeah, good luck. That's not going to work. You can't just arrest the players willingly, especially 7th level players. Steal from him a mace of smiting, plead their innocence. Success to apologize to all as characters that can help them track down the missing heirloom. Well, instead they could be, that's another thing where if I can have like the lizard folk, maybe one of the lizard folk is blamed for stealing something. Do some kind of big investigation check. Seed, follow the trail of the halfling. Characters find Finnan Undergallow, Master Thief, wearing a ring of free action and hiring an abandoned mining warehouse. Member of the Kraken Society, doing the faction of traveling to Purple Rocks. Makes its hidden in the chimney of a forest and warehouse can be found. Okay. Successful DC 30 investigation check. Wow. All right, and they're rewarded for that little bit. Well, that's kind of interesting, I guess. Depends if we want to get a little bit of a side quest action to do other things. So, as I said, we could do the lizard folk thing, have them give a quest, which could be a social quest, could be a, hey, go hunt this crocodile quest, different things, but eventually the players will get the information to go to the Sahuagin Stronghold, which I'm going to probably put right here in the Red Rocks, one of these islands, and the players will have to very carefully, probably not even take their ship in there. I don't even know if they're able to do that. They may have to park their ship at, like, Thornhold, which maybe that's a good excuse for why they have to go there anyway. It's like, hey, we don't want to go into Red Rocks. It's, like, really dangerous. We need to go to the nearby place of Thornhold and either get a proper map or we need to take, like, smaller vessels. But that may be the only way they can get into the Sahuagin Stronghold would be to take smaller vessels to make it in there. And maybe the lizard folk, maybe they do some kind of cool thing where like the lizard folk will be like, look, we'll provide a distraction. We'll pretend like we're mounting an attack. So we'll draw a lot of the Sahuagin away. It's very risky for us, obviously, but then that will get you guys a chance to get inside. So that actually could be a good way for the players to motivate to actually work with this tribe and get the information they need. But like I said, we could do some of the fun, side questy stuff a little bit before that if I wanted to pad things out. Although with the size of the final enemy being a big 60-room dungeon and giving the players enough, tasks that they have to accomplish throughout, which is, somehow restoring, unsinking this island if I want to go that route, which is through maybe some kind of super magical device in one of the boss rooms. Take out some Sahuagin leadership, which probably is just the two barons, I guess, and maybe the high priestess, and then rescue the NPCs that they were originally here to rescue. So you can accomplish all those things in this dungeon. It's not required to clear out the entire dungeon because Lizard Folk basically said once you do those things, then we can properly mount a counterattack and take our own base back. Maybe if I wanted to, I could go the route of like, hey, you give us the signal once you've taken it out and we can launch the attack. But I don't know. I feel like I don't know if it'd be more interesting for the players to try to make their way out stealthily and get out of there and then just hand wave the what happens next later with the players leaving, or actually try to mount this attack for real somehow while the players are like balls deep inside of the Sahuagin Stronghold
and then somehow the lizard folk are also mounting an attack. I don't know. That all seems like crazy timing to pull off, but crazier things have happened. Mimic ghost ship. No, I don't think so. Floating mimic chests. You know, I used a mimic door, but I did kind of give them a good clue that it was not a normal door. Down the Dragon's Dogma 2 character creator. Nice. Hey, you want to talk about a new game coming out? I just got Unicorn Overlord. Holy shit. I love me some tactics games. I've played all the Fire Emblems, the Shining Forces. What are there good tactics games out there? Obviously, like all the XCOM stuff. But the strategy tactics RPGs are a special place in my heart. And Unicorn Overlord does some real cool things in there. So we just picked it up today. I was playing the demo over the weekend, and it's pretty fucking cool so far. Pretty damn cool. And of course, still enjoying Helldivers, though I don't play that one as often as I probably need to. Shout out to Demnix for helping us with our Helldiving the other night. I do think that is going to do it for this crafting stream, though. We've got a bunch to talk about in the future. Hopefully next week I will have the final enemy maps ready to go, so we can start planning out that dungeon. But for the first session, technically, we're probably not even going to get to the final enemy, or to the Sahuagin Stronghold dungeon. Instead, we'll be doing the level ups and the encounter, as I mentioned, which is probably going to be the Sahuagin, and then getting to Thornhold. So it'll be a lot of the other stuff first. So I really need to figure out what all the precursor stuff is to the Sahuagin Stronghold before we even start looking over that dungeon again. I could see us easily spending a full session before making it to the Sahuagin Stronghold itself, especially if I end up throwing some more things at them. All right, so that'll do it for this week's Crafting the Deep. If you enjoy the content, please do check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, Brennan, Zendersider, Eclectic, Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Corey, Big Nut, John F, John L, Eric, Tyler, Nathan, Kemp, Crystal, Counselor, Andrew, Daryl, the Reldrin, Captain Woody 79, Stephanie, Andy, Patrick, Jason, Ismail, Amit, Lumpy Spuds, Quinn, Sharney, and gold patrons RPG Papergrams, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Nidless, Lion, Sam, Madrome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Rufus, Carolyn, Jerry, Thomas, Glenn, and Marcus. Thank you all very much for your support. Remember, I am gone for pretty much the rest of the week. I will be doing a review, but after that, I'm on vacation, so I will see you all again for another live stream on Monday.